All right. Once again, driver's license webinar 2. Thanks for tuning in. And you guys are gonna get a lot of information. I'm gonna go over some little bit of history on why I did another webinar. And then we're just gonna be mainly dealing with the templates, what to give them, how to deal with the opposition, because always there's some type of opposition. And remember, when you're getting opposition, check your attitude, because a lot of opposition, most of the opposition comes from your perception of the people you're dealing with. In this community, in this space, a lot of people have a negative look at the people in government. And you have to remember, these people are doing a job. They went to school. They believe they're doing something right in their mind from their world perception. That's what they think. So if you come at them with hostilities, you're going to be met back with hostilities. Even if you have that thought in your mind, it can help. It could possibly get you rejected. Yes, some places are tougher than others, but remember, you are the creator of all things you are experiencing, and take responsibility for that. All right. I know on the screen you guys see my Department of State authenticated passport application. Now,
Akeem, I just want to interrupt real quick. We see a big old, this meeting is being recorded.
Yes, it is being recorded.
No, it's a big old sign in the middle of the screen that says that.
Okay. Is everybody else having that issue?
Just hit continue. You should see
Hit
something.
continue.
Oh, just hit continue.
Yeah.
That's because they're trying to record it too, and they need your permission to do that.
Yeah, they gotta. Whenever I hit record, it's gonna make everybody agree that they want to be recorded. So
acknowledged. Thank you.
All right, that's why you have that there. All right. Where was I? All right. This process, I would like for everyone. A few of you, I know you already done my passport process. I don't know if everybody's done it, but this is to be done after you do the passport process, if you can. Some of you guys got issues with the IRS, got issues with child support that will not allow you to get a passport until that is rectified. So one of the documents you're going to be submitting is your authenticated copy of your passport application, along with the other stuff I'm going to show you. So that's what I'm adding to it. Plus, I changed the language in some of the documents, and I'm also adding years ago we talked about the injunction. So that has been changed. It's kind of, you can still look at it like an injunction, but that is going to be an option you can include with submitting your paperwork. All right. Someone said they're waiting for 2 months for the authentication. Yes, authentication takes a while. Sometimes they call you, and if you don't answer, they'll send you a letter. But it took me 3-4 months to get mine back. And COVID has not been helping that situation out at all. All right. So let's go to, close the screen out. Let's go here. I'm going to share the screen in a minute. As soon as all right. Every state, I won't. So what is a county deed? A lawful sworn declaration used to rebut or correct a presumption. We know that the government works off presumptions, right? They presume you to be a United States citizen. They presume you to be born in the United States. They make presumptions. And they did that by way of the 14th Amendment, born or naturalized into the United States. Restores the lawful record from which government derives. Presumption of consent, example documents, birth certificate, marriage license, passport, name in all caps. All right, what's going on? Let me first make sure. All right, testing. Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Hey. All right. Welcome to the new show, Unbound Soul, with myself, Akeem, and Raquel. New addition to the team.
Yep.
I've worked with Raquel consistently since October. And the synchronicity of that is October was 10 years ago, October was when I really entered my first court case where I was accused of something that I didn't do. It was October. And that's what put me on the path of understanding how the court system works. And Raquel, similar experience. I don't know if her first encounter was in October. I can't remember, but you could tell us that for sure. So Raquel, tell us about yourself. Tell us who you are. I know who you are, and that's why you're here. You know, I don't hook up with just anybody. Um, so tell them, introduce yourself.
Right. So my name is Raquel. I am by profession an occupational therapist. So I've seen a lot of what the system does to affect families. And even before I became an occupational therapist, I wanted to work with families abroad in embassies and what have you. And now working with Akeem, I get to do some of that work. It's just I'm literally here on domestic soil and seeing how the government treats a lot of families and how treasonous they are. So it's like a perfect marriage. I get to help the families in one way as an occupational therapist, and by being with them on a regular basis, they share so much with me, and I'm able to offer some support. Thanks to you, Akeem, a lot of what you've shown me, taught me, I've shared with other families, and now they seek it. So when I come and I work with their child, they're asking me questions. Well, I have this situation. What can I do? So I'm grateful I get to wear many hats of service to support the families that I work with.
I had my mic muted. I'm sure those families are grateful. So, occupational therapists. I know that occupation is covers a lot of field, but what specifically do you cover when it comes to occupational therapy?
So when it comes to occupational therapy, it's the occupation of life. Can you function safely? Do you have issues with problem solving? Do you have motoric issues? You know, could it be fine motor? It could be gross motor. Um, could it be sensory? All these different areas I look at as an occupational therapist. I
Mm-hmm.
work primarily with children. I used to work with older adults, which that in and of itself was a great education working with uh, the older generation teaching me. I'm helping them, but then they're also teaching me at the same time. Um, and working with the children now, I work with children as young as my youngest was 4 months old, and my oldest was 21. So it's seeing where they need support with their developmental milestones, what compensatory techniques. So if there's something that they're unable to do, it's like, what can we adjust? What can we modify to help them do this successfully as independently as possible? So the goal is for people to be as independent as possible. So I've been able to work with so many families because of the age ranges and working with older adults. I have even worked with people who were almost unalived, and it left with they were left with permanent deficits. And I would come in and see what could be adjusted in their home, and what could be modified to help them continue living as independently as possible despite what they've been through.
All right, cool. Thanks for that explanation. Um, so how we met is you had some issues with law enforcement in
Yeah.
a, what do they call that? I always get it. A roadblock is or
Traffic stop.
traffic stop checkpoint.
Correct.
Right. So
Yeah.
without, I don't want to traumatize you because I know it was a lot.
Hmm.
So if you would share with us your experience without, triggering any bad memories of this
Yeah.
situation.
Um, yeah. So I was exiting the highway, the West Side Highway,
Mm-hmm.
and I was actually my GPS because I was going to a neighborhood I'm not familiar with. That's not a numbered street. So my GPS was going a little bonkers that day, and I ended up exiting the Upper West Side from the West Side Highway, and all I did was turn left. I didn't see any signage, nothing, and I was summoned to pull over. They asked for my ID and my registration, and when I asked if I had committed a crime, they admitted that I didn't. So I didn't consent to it because I knew I couldn't verbalize because I was kind of in shock. The Fourth Bill of Right, but I knew that it was unconstitutional what they were doing because I hadn't done anything for them to warrant
Right.
asking for my ID. So when I told them I didn't consent, um, the two male cops kept on saying that I had to give it to them, that it was because it was a traffic stop. And I said, well, you just admitted I didn't commit a crime. So why am I still here?
Right.
And then the lieutenant shows up. I don't think she liked that I stood up to authority, what they considered authority.
Right.
Um, and I just said, well, you don't have a law. You're not providing me a law that you're standing on to justify why I need to give you the ID. So I'm not consenting to it. And I was actually waiting for a lawyer to call me back. I had called a lawyer and I was waiting for the lawyer to call me back. And it was literally less than 4 minutes. They violently removed me from my car.
Mm.
And they kept me detained for 13 hours.
Mm.
And while I was in the holding cell, they were trying to ask me questions. So they were then violating my fifth Bill of Rights. They were asking me questions. I didn't have representation there. Um, and they were just basically trying to get me to admit that I had committed a crime when
Right.
it didn't even make any sense. They had said that I didn't commit a crime.
Right.
And one of them said that I allegedly injured them, and there's no medical documentation to really support that there was an injury that happened.
Right.
And thank God I had a dash cam. So my advice to everyone is get a dash cam.
Yeah, I think that's
Uh, that if I don't think I would have felt as confident as I was and still am if I hadn't had the dash cam. Because relying on their dash cam footage, uh, you couldn't hear very well, you couldn't see hands. So this one officer alleged that I grabbed their hand, and you don't see that on my dash cam at all.
right.
So thank God I had a dash cam. So everyone get a good dash cam. It's definitely worth the investment. And because of that, I was able to enter in documents and stating over and over again, and I let them know I had a dash cam. That they had put felony charges on me. Again, I didn't commit a crime, and
But
they admitted that.
driving and not showing them your ID, felony. Isn't that crazy? You didn't hurt
Well,
anybody, didn't rob anybody, didn't commit murder. You just was minding your business, getting off, and they decided to block up the road and hey, show me your license and registration, and which means that they're looking for problems,
right.
which in turn violates your right to uh what is that? The first not to incriminate yourself, but the other one, they stopped you without warrant
Hmm.
or probable cause.
Hmm.
So which is a violation of your constitutionally protected rights. I just want to be clear. We don't have constitutional rights. We have rights that are protected by the Constitution,
Hmm.
period. So when, okay, so you went through, you spent 13, 14 hours in
Right. And so what the felony charge was assault. They said I assaulted,
The officer.
but
they
it was
initiated the contact.
they exactly.
Right.
And for like several hours, I didn't even know that they were putting that until I was arraigned. So the whole day they kept on saying it's a misdemeanor, it's a misdemeanor, and I said, okay, then why am I still here if it's a misdemeanor? And then all of a sudden, there's assault charges.
Yeah. See, what happens is they know they screwed up. They know it. So they have to inflame the situation by adding some ridiculous charge so that they can scare you into backing off.
Mhm.
But you didn't back off. You know, what did you do? After that, what did you do?
I sent affidavits. I sent it to the police precinct. I sent it to the attorney general, the assistant attorney general. I sent it to the judges at the courthouse. I sent it to the police commissioner, and I mailed it, and I hand delivered them 3 times. So in total, most of the people, because sometimes I had a hard time actually hand delivering it, but they all received my documents. The people in the precinct received it 6 times. I would say everyone else received the documents 4 times. So they can't say that they didn't know ignorance. They can't plead ignorance because I made sure everyone was informed.
Glad you brought that up because I know we talked about this before. And what was the time frame when you sent those affidavits? How soon?
I sent them out, I think, 3 weeks after, because I wanted to make sure that I combed through the dash cam over and over and over again. Like I was listening to it very intently, with tears streaming down my face, and sometimes not being able to leave my home afterwards because I was just so upset from watching it over and over again. But I needed to hear every word, every detail, so that way I could enter it in the affidavit. So if they questioned it, it's like I have it on the dash cam. So if you want the dash cam footage, I'm happy to share that with you, to give you a copy, because it matches what's in the affidavit. And I believe that's one of the things, if not that is the thing that saved me, was that I kept on showing them.
Because the dash cam showed that you didn't do anything. You weren't violent
Mhm.
towards them. They were violent towards you.
Mhm.
Now, you mentioned something to me either last week or the week before about a notice of claim that you couldn't do something because of a notice of claim.
So what opposing counsel now? So now I'm in settlement. I have countersued the NYPD. So right now we've gone through depositions, and now it's in the settlement phase. Opposing counsel is doing his best to say that I don't have a claim, that I don't have a right to make a claim because I didn't do a notice of claim within 90 days.
Okay, let me
But
so right there. That's why I brought that
yeah.
up. I brought that up because, and I'm glad we had this conversation because this should help you. You did do a notice of claim. You just didn't do it their way. You put your
Mm.
okay.
There we go. Let me make a note of that because I have to respond to this motion.
Right. So there you go. So I'm glad you because I said okay because they're saying you didn't do this. Say you're not a you don't work for them, so you won't know that you need to put that in.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not a lawyer, so they can't treat you like any other. You did do a notice of claim. They ignored you and didn't direct you into the notice of claim. So technically you did do a notice of claim because you gave everyone notice by way of an affidavit. Period. But there we go.
Good to know.
But so let's rewind back to the whole arrest situation. What happened with that case? What happened?
It was dismissed. It
Right.
was
So
dismissed, but it took 6 months.
got exonerated. They dismissed it.
Mm-hmm.
But it did harm you because the type of profession you're in, being fingerprinting could jeopardize you future employment,
Mm-hmm.
current and future employment. But I want to also mention to people who may be in similar situations, an arrest is an allegation. It's not a conviction. So a job cannot deny you an opportunity to work for them based off an arrest, and especially if it's still pending. They cannot deny you for that reason. They could deny you for they could use something else, but if they specifically deny you for that, then they are liable because you can't deny somebody because the law says, the Constitution says you are innocent until proven guilty. It's just an accusation. Someone accused you. And this current climate, as soon as someone gets accused, everybody starts already have them convicted in their mind. But that's not what the law says. The law says you are innocent until proven guilty. So the burden of proof is on the state. Obviously, they couldn't prove that you did anything wrong, so they dismissed it. And they was kind of hoping you would go away, but you didn't, which is I'm thankful for that. That's one of the reasons why you're working with me, is because so many people run into these problems and they run from it.
Mhm.
How can we change the system if we keep running from our own rights?
Mhm.
You just asserted your rights, they violated it. And of course you got slack from people that were close to you saying, oh, you should have just did this and this. And this is why it keeps going on, because no one wants to go through difficulty to elevate. Everything in life, in order for it to elevate, it has to go through some type of difficulty. For a seed, has to go get uncomfortable inside of that seed before it to break out. So for a time, it's feeling very uncomfortable in there, and then it breaks the seed, and then it sprouts, and it grows through growth. Everything that must grow have to go through some difficulty. The reason why a lot of people are stuck in the position that they're in, and they're complaining why they can't get anywhere, because you're not wanting to go through the trial. This has elevated you like big time. Right now you're in the phase of where they want to settle with you, although they're offering ridiculous amounts, but it proves that even if you took the low amount, right? Let's just say that, and we know you're not, but it says that if you assert your rights and try to enforce them, it is money to be made by doing it. But you got to go through something.
Mhm. Yeah, it was a lot of struggle, especially when for that 6 month period, I wasn't sure if they were going to try and somehow push the charges, and I would have like some sort of rap sheet that would then affect my livelihood, like for the rest of my life.
Right.
I was told that it was possible that I wouldn't be able to get registered nationally if I had an arrest. And it depended, they would do an investigation, what have you, but I would have to go through that scrutiny and embarrassment before I could even possibly get a national registration.
Right.
But when I got arrested and I was in the holding cell, I in the holding cell, I said, this happened for a reason, and this is not going to end with just me. This is something, what I learned from this, I know I'm meant to share with others so they don't go through this. Uh, like I said before, I work with a lot of families that struggled. I work with marginalized families here in New York City, families that really do struggle. They have to, they'll have multiple families living in one apartment just to make ends meet.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that this was something I would have to share with them. There was a time when it was like a few months, a family had informed me a few months after I started working with them that there was sweeps done in their public housing complex. Do you know what sweeps are?
Yeah, like just as the cops go through and just check stuff and
Yeah, they'll just ask for your ID, kind of like a traffic stop, kind of like what
right.
happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just arresting people that had been arrested before but served time.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing new, because they had outdated warrants, right? Or warrants that had already been fulfilled with whatever crime they were being charged with, and they served their time because there was some warrant on record at some point. They were arresting people. So there was one mom who, she was a single mom. I think she got arrested when she was like, I don't know, 18. She was really young. And so now this is years later. She's a mom, a single mom. And because they were doing sweeps and they asked for her ID, she gave in the ID because she's just like, I didn't do anything wrong. I just want to go to work. They arrested her and she's a single mom.
Mm,
So,
terrible.
yeah, so they do things like that.
Yeah. So you could sue for that. And this is the thing. They are so accustomed to violating your rights, they don't even know that they are violating rights. Like, I heard firsthand, what, without going into the details, because still litigation is going on, that cops really don't know that the state has put them in a position to violate people's rights,
Mm-hmm.
because they take an oath to the Constitution, but they don't read the real actual what it says. And even if they read it, I don't even think they would understand it, because they're so accustomed to doing things way those statutes say, that when they read what the Constitution says, well, they'll default to what those statutes say over what the Constitution said, because they're programmed to just follow those rules.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how they want you to be. They want you to be in a position where you're just following orders blindly.
Mm-hmm.
So hats off to you and commend you for going through with that, because that's a lot, for someone to go through, and you being a female, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Someone just
Yeah.
locking you up and you've been minding your business, and now you're sitting behind the jail and you're like, oh, I wonder how this is going to all turn out. You have
Mm-hmm.
all of these things going through your mind. Then the trauma of how they treated you, and you're like, you're saying to yourself, I didn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here, and it just goes to show you can be minding your business and you can end up with a charge just minding your business,
Mm-hmm.
because the system that they have placed in front of the Constitution is designed to create customers by way of enforcing frivolous traffic stops.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way they make money. They make money off of that.
Yep.
So
Yeah. And being that I still work in these neighborhoods, I do see police officers, and if they seem approachable, I definitely keep my distance. But I will ask them, "Have you read the Constitution?" And they look at me. Do you remember taking an oath and swearing an oath to the Constitution? And they're like, "Yeah, we had to do that,
they
in the
remember
police
that,
academy."
but they
I
don't
said,
know what it's
"Okay."
about.
I said, "But how can you take an oath to something you don't even know, you haven't even read?"
It's a contract
And
they accept.
right. And so there was one officer, and it was a woman, and I'm very grateful because she seemed like she really wanted to know. She was like, maybe I should read, and I said you should, and really focus. You as a police officer, focus on the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment. Study that. Look up different YouTubes. Look up what lawyers are saying. You really need to learn that, and if you learn that and you embody that, you're going to really serve the community. So if you're truly about serving the community, make sure you learn that. And she's like, thank you so much. I'm going to look into it.
Yeah,
Other cops are just like, whatever.
they don't care. Yeah,
Yeah.
because if every cop really understood that, they would not do what they're doing. They
Mm-hmm.
would not. They would just keep. Because what is law enforcement for? That's what it is public service and to keep the peace. But the way they have them enforcing laws now is not keeping the peace. The regular hardworking person is being harassed more than the criminal. Like just the normal everyday person is being harassed. Why do they do that? Because they need the revenue. That's how they keep the system going. So, so you had a topic you wanted to talk about. But before we do that, anybody that's listening, I have a number down there. If you guys got some type of thoughts or comment, then this is our new calling number. So every show will have this number if you guys want to join in. I'm trying to go back to the old format where I can have more audience participation in these talks. And it also helps you get free consultations. So you don't have to send me an email or try to text me, and I have to ignore your emails because you didn't set up a private consultation with me. This is the number. You could call in and you could ask your questions. All right. Now, if you don't want to be too personal with your business, then I recommend that you get a personal consultation at akemail.com. Eventually, Raquel will have her own setup where you will be getting consultations with her. Don't worry, she'll be able to answer your questions because I will be right there helping her. Okay. But I have to move some of the responsibility off of me. I am being overwhelmed. And also, I'm so overwhelmed with doing trust. She is helping me do that. So now we could take on more people to help protect their assets, protect their families by way of the trust. So if you want to get a trust set up, go to akemail.com, get a consultation. And what I'll do, if you do sign up for the trust, I will take that fee that you paid for the consultation. It will be applied to your trust document. It will apply to the cost of whatever the trust is going to be. All right. So if you want to get set up with a trust, akemail.com, set up a consultation. We can go over what your best options are. I got somebody here to help me that we can get it done quickly because I get behind. You know, I still got something to wrap up from a couple of months ago. So let's get back on to the show. You had a very good topic that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
What is that?
Community.
Community. Okay.
Community. Yeah. So being that I work in various communities, I do see that there is a disconnect, and a lot of people don't acknowledge or don't see the power of community. And that's done by design, as you know, divide and conquer.
Right.
Right. Instead of unify and strengthen, they go for divide and conquer because then they, the system, the government, have more control over you. So I really want people to acknowledge the power of community. And I found two scriptures, and there's a bunch of scripture on community. So let me go ahead. I'm going to read. One of them is Romans 12, verse 4 to 5. And it reads, "For as in one body we have many members, and the members do not all have the same function. So we, though many, are one body in Christ, and individually members one of another."
Right.
So here we are, we're trying to do everything all on our own. And I admire people who can take on a lot of those tasks. There are people who are a jack of all trades, and there are people who are not. But they do have their gifts. So if everyone worked together in a community, that would be helpful. So for me, specifically with this arrest, I think one of the reasons why they backed off just a little bit was because I had friends and family calling the precinct. So they knew I wasn't alone. And that's very important. When you're alone, that's when they go for the attack. Even if you're in the hospital, right? I had a good friend who was being coerced to take certain medical interventions, an injectable, in order for her to get a medical procedure done. And because we all looked up the Patient Bill of Rights, we all looked up a lot of information, and there was probably about 10 of us constantly going there. I was there writing. She wrote an affidavit, and I was a witness. I had another friend come in as a witness because we didn't have a notary. I video recorded. I put the hospital on notice, and because we were a community, they backed off. Right?
It takes. That's what it takes.
So it's so important to have community. And a lot of the children, even in school, they're told, worry about yourself when they're trying to take care of their friends, rather than saying, acknowledging them. Thank you for caring about your friend. It's really important to be part of a community and help your friend. I will help them now. Now I want you to go ahead and continue to do your work.
Right.
Something like that, rather than shutting them down. And so that becomes ingrained, that becomes embedded. And then you have people now that when someone needs help, they're just like, that's not my problem.
Yeah.
You
They rather
know?
record stuff than
Mhm.
post it so they can go viral than to help out now.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, with the children that I work with, the ones that are older, I emphasize the importance of community. And they'll even say it in the middle of a session, oh, I did this because I'm a member of a community. You know, I can be a hero
Right.
just by being me, right? So everyone needs to remember that you can be a hero just by being you, you know, as long as you're acting in a way that benefits the community as a whole.
Right.
So I have another scripture here. So above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling, which we grumble a lot. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. So even in my sessions, I used to do group sessions in a school. And when I would tell the children that they're heroes because they have a gift. So they didn't understand. They thought, oh, it was a gift that I received. And I would tell them, the gift that you received is not for you to keep. It is for you to share with others because you have something they don't. And you make yourself stronger by gifting what you've been gifted. And so the children really took to it. I used to get called in the hallway, like, oh, look what I did. And I used my gift. I read really well. That's my gift. And I helped my friend learn new words. I helped them learn their sight words. How empowering is that?
Very, very empowering.
You know, so it's just so important. Like, we need to be more neighborly. A child that I work with who he has to have a certain blanket. If he doesn't have a certain blanket and he's on the spectrum, he won't sleep.
Right.
And his mom's a single mom. She was like, I don't know what to do. And the grandma knew the neighbors and she said, I want you to go down the hallway to this lady. She has a washer and a dryer. And ask her if you can wash the blanket there or, you know, dry it. She had a washer. And so she went and dried it, and the child was able to go to sleep. And she's like, oh my God, I don't know how I would have survived the night if my neighbor hadn't been willing to help. So simple things like that we all can be doing. So I don't know. I don't know if people in the audience or people in your membership have heard of the 3.5%. Like if 3.5% of people.
Probably not, because when you mentioned it to me, I wasn't familiar with it mentioned the way you said it. But I know the concept of what you're talking about. But go ahead, explain it.
So according to researchers, it takes only 3.5% of a population to make change with micro actions on a regular basis, on a consistent basis. I mean, you have to be disciplined.
Right.
And this works for the good and the bad. So we are constantly being exposed to the television and other programming, which then stokes fear. So if there's so many people, if there's a good number of people living in a state of fear, it literally affects the whole energy around in that environment, in that community. Even though they may not be unified, it's still affecting that physical, closely, within close proximity, that community.
Right.
So they keep on doing that, and they know how powerful it is. Hence why we're constantly being bombarded with fear and anger, right? It's harder for us to get out of it because it's in every, medium. You have the phone, you have the music, you have, the television. Everywhere you go, there's something. Billboards, even in the subway when they say, you're subject to random backpack checks. Right. So people hear that over and over again, and they're conditioned to think it's okay.
Right.
And I'm like, let them try me. Let them try me.
Right. See, you mentioned the television, right? Or television.
Mm-hmm.
20, 30 years ago. Well, when I was a kid, right? It's just like certain things they wouldn't show on television, right? It was considered taboo. If they used the word damn, that was a big deal when I was a kid on television. Now they're using the B words, they're using all kind of, and what they did was over time, little microaggressions. They implemented more and more things that were considered not good uh for family consumption. And now we're so far away from what it was all of those years ago.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things that they considered inappropriate are now appropriate now. Right? So they're doing it. They know they can move the needle little by little.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, 3.5% of the population to accept it. And then now you have the whole population pretty much doing things that they normally wouldn't have did 20, 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Even in like the rap music, right? Rap music was always controversial. But if you listen to music from the 80s and music from now, it's like I'd rather listen to stuff from the 80s that they had a
Mm-hmm.
problem with than that wasn't such a big deal. Now the stuff they're talking about is, strip clubs and just the degrading of women.
Mm-hmm.
It's and that's considered normal now. But why? How did
Mm-hmm.
that happen? Microaggressions,
Bit
constantly
of it.
putting in more and more of what they wanted, and they do that on purpose because if you can get a community of people not to have good self-esteem, you can keep them as slaves and make lots of money off of them.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing the people in our community rush for is if a new Air Jordan comes out, they're all standing online waiting for the store to open to spend $300, $400, $500 on one pair of sneakers. And half of those kids that are buying most of those kids that are buying those sneakers don't even have $100 in their bank account that they can, they don't have any investments. They don't have property.
Mm-hmm.
The only property they have is these I have Jordans. And where are they going to wear these Jordans? On the same street that they hang out at all the time, which is not bringing them any benefit. My mother used to say this when we were kids. They get all of these new clothes and they get dressed up for the corner, to stand out on the corner. She used to say
Mm-hmm.
that all the time. And I'm thankful for the parents that I had. They didn't allow us to do that. They didn't allow us to go buy those expensive things and then stand on the corner just to show them off there to a bunch of people that are just as impoverished as I am.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they like you said, they slowly got us indoctrinated with that. Now we have to take responsibility. We fell for it. Like for instance, with your situation, you resisted them violating your rights. But the reason why they can get away with it so much and they think it's normal is because no one resists.
It's a hyper normalization of,
Yeah,
of being violated.
right.
And it's
And
been
you
done.
know,
It's like the
okay.
boiling frog, you know? You know the
And
boiling frog?
yeah, oh, you just slowly turn up the
Slowly turn it up, and he doesn't even know he's cooking.
right.
No.
And that's actually how we are. We're cooked. We are basically cooked right now because
Mm-hmm.
anything you do, like you said, you went out there and they just stopped you because you didn't give up your ID. Now that means you need to go to jail, which is ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Oh, and then several months later, I got pulled over again.
Mm-hmm.
And they threatened to take me to jail again over the ID. So I gave them my passport card.
Mm-hmm.
I refused to give them the license,
Mm-hmm.
and they gave me a summons. So it just goes to show that they just arrested me just to make a point. Because
Right.
in another situation, they threatened me and they said, just, you have to give us some form of ID. And I was like, well, I'm not giving you the license. I will give you my passport card because that identifies me more than
Right.
anything else. And they gave me a summons, right? They didn't take me to jail. And
Right.
you
That's
know,
what they
they
could have done in the other case. They like when they run your car and your plates, they know exactly who you are. So all of this, give me this, and they have ways of checking you out. But
Mhm.
here's why they want you to give the license, because it's a violation of your privacy, your right to what is that right to what is that? I can't um
The right to incriminate yourself?
no, not the
No.
right to
Oh,
incriminate, the right to be private in your home, where without probable cause, that
oh,
section.
that's the fourth one. That's the person protected in your FX papers
Right.
and things like that.
If they would have just ran your plate randomly, that's a violation of that. That's surveillance.
Mm, really?
That's surveillance. So you can't surveil someone without their permission or court order. That gives you a warrant. So if they just went and said, "I'm just going to do this," you were refusing. So by giving them the ID, you give them the right to surveil you, to look you up. But when you refuse to do that, they that gives that takes away their what they're trying to do, which is violate your rights. It takes that away.
Mhm.
So they resort to bullying tactics. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
anything they do to look up your plate, do anything, that is a violation of your right to remain private.
Right. Right. And when there's four cops and you're by yourself, it's
Right.
very easy to be intimidated and to
Mhm.
just be like, yeah, I'm just going to give you whatever because I don't know what you're going to do.
Right.
So yeah. So the 3.5% we can use in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a community, a cluster of people here and a cluster of people elsewhere,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to send, reverberations throughout society, right? If more people, and we had this conversation earlier, if more people did what I did, there may be a significant change in the system,
Right.
you know. Um, and I've actually had a micro change. I was going into the courthouse. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. I couldn't wear a mask. Like I actually do have a hard time wearing a mask. And this is when they were still
Right.
enforcing the mask. No, so I guess it was like maybe 4 years ago. And um, I contacted the judge for that courthouse, and his secretary said, "No, well, you have to wear it." And I said, "This doesn't make any sense because I have a medical condition,
Right.
so there must be a reasonable accommodation." Um, and I had to keep on calling. I had to be, very consistent. Again, that's a micro action,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was able to speak with one of their head attorneys,
Mm-hmm.
and I explained, and he says, "Well, why didn't you just fill out the ADA form or submit something on the ADA with the ADA link?" I said, "Because I look on the website and the ADA link isn't there." And he's
Oh,
like, "No, it's there." I said, "Let's look through it together. Go through the website now. Let's look through it together and see if you can find it easily." Now, most of the people who come to the courthouse do not have your savvy as an attorney. Can you look through it? And then he was like, "You're right. It is hard to find."
right.
Literally 2 weeks later, it was right there, boom, on the page
Mm.
where you can see it.
'Cause they know if it's not there, they can get sued for that,
Hmm.
violating people with disabilities.
Right. So those are the type of things that need to be done, and a lot of people are just intimidated by making those phone calls. And oh, they did not treat me well when I made these phone calls. They were putting me down. The one specific secretary, and so then I started emailing her boss, and I said, "This is what your secretary is saying, and I don't appreciate it. I'm trying to do what's right, not just for me, but for all people."
Mm.
And I had to keep on being assertive. And then I got an email, your request is being granted. And then the other attorney saying, we're going to, I have to look into this. And 2 weeks later, when I go to the website, it's changed.
Right.
So if there's enough of us to do this, and again, this was like 4 years ago when I was just learning, this stuff.
Right.
And I just knew I couldn't easily back down
Mm.
because it's not just me that's being affected. It's
Right.
everyone that comes behind me, right? It's
Right.
the children that I serve. They're eventually going to grow up and have to deal with this world that violates them. So if
Right.
I can do anything to prevent that, to protect the babies that I'm working with now, I'm going to do it, respectfully
Right.
and within the law, abiding by the Constitution. Um, and these are the things that we have to do. Again, 3.5%, that's not a lot.
That's not a lot, but that's enough to get to have that snowball effect.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, and if we all work together as a common goal, we have to find our community, like your community, the community that you're creating with the Church of Infinite Abundance.
Right.
That is a community because we have the shared goal of breaking out of this matrix,
Mm.
um, and not allowing them to siphon off of us, right? Um, and there's so many studies that where they talk about it. I mean, even Harvard studies
Mm-hmm.
where they studied rats,
Mm.
and as rats started learning new skills, rats that were unrelated to them were able to acquire the skills. So everyone's looking at epigenetic when they're looking at rats, but is it really epigenetics or is it more of the collective consciousness,
Yeah.
right? So they saw that rats that were not in that genetic line were doing a lot of the same skill set as the rats that initiated them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then they were finding that more rats in other places were doing that.
Right.
And
So
it's the same thing with the 100th monkey effect. Yeah, go
right.
ahead.
The energy was emanating out there.
Hmm.
Our consciousness is energy that is
Right.
being emitted everywhere we go. So that's why you can
Hmm.
go into a room and you can feel kind of weird because maybe
Hmm.
people are thinking negative about you. You're picking up on that in the energy of their thoughts. And that's why the rats were able to pick up those same skills because these rats it was putting that energy out there and they were picking up on it. We
Right.
are
And
way more we have a lot of abilities that are untapped and
hmm
unrevealed because this society has dumbed us down, number one, and covered them.
hmm
We've been covered by someone else's agenda to keep us into a slave mindset. That is really the mission. If we could keep the people dumb, we could keep them as our slaves and they can help keep our corporations running.
hmm hmm
Because we really need big corporations. No. If you get into a community of people, right? And I have a skill, you have a skill, and they have a skill, we could survive without any government interference because we have these skills that keep our community strong,
hmm
right? So, uh, and if you get the right plants, seeds, herbs, know how to cultivate the land to get your herbs. Like I went to West Virginia over the weekend, spent time with some mutual friends that we know. Um, and they all everybody there was a herbalist. And I went into the shop and the lady had mullein extract bottle. And Karina says to me, "Well, that stuff just grows everywhere." I didn't know that. That mullein the mullein plant grows everywhere. Everywhere you look, you can find it. I said, "Well,
I didn't
show
know.
me where it is, and I'll get it myself." She said, "It's all over the highways. It's everywhere. You just got to know where to look." So I put that bottle down. I said, "I go get me some fresh mullein." So that's how if you have people with these skill sets, they'll teach us how to survive. And mullein, if anybody doesn't know what mullein is good for, it's good for people with asthma. Very good for asthma because I was an asthmatic. I was hospitalized as a kid. I had the inhaler. I haven't used that inhaler in over 10 years for any because another thing good for asthma is cayenne
I
pepper.
think, yeah, I think pineapple too. So
I didn't know
putting
pineapple.
cayenne pepper on pineapple, I think, is a very
Yeah.
potent.
And one thing about cayenne pepper, any herbal supplement that you put it with, it amplifies its effect by 10. Cayenne pepper is an amplifier of anything it's associated with. So that's probably why with the pineapple, if pineapples go for asthma and you put it with the cayenne pepper, it's even better.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I have some dried mullein leaves in a bag that I bought from herb place, and I actually put it in a thing and smoked and inhaled it, and it opened up my lungs just inhaling. And how I knew that, I watched this old nature show. And the guy worked in this factory that ruined his lungs. He worked in some place where it ruined his lungs, and he uses the mullein to keep his breathing going. He was like, he had it there, and he was burning it and just breathing it in. And coincidentally, he was living in the Appalachian Mountains.
Mm.
So he went around collecting mullein, and he burned it, just regular burned it, and just inhaled the smoke
Wow.
to help his lungs. So I can attest to that works. It and since I started doing that, I've been relieved of the having to have a inhaler to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are simple things that we can do, but we're told that we can't. Like the
Right.
doctor's not going to tell you that because the doctor has
No,
to make
they
money
try to
off
make
of
money
you.
off of you. All of
Yeah.
this planet was designed to be self-sustaining. Long as you treat it right and you know what you're looking for, so you get to proper education, your body will heal from anything illness that you get. I don't care what it is, it will heal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe there's anything that's not reversible. I don't believe it is. If you give your body the right nutrition. The problem is people are eating poor diets, and that's another thing that aids in illness. And then if not getting the right treatment, also it amplifies that. So yeah,
Right.
so it's
And not having the community.
not having a community, because with the community, it, without
It's
the
working in
community,
reverse.
by
It's
yourself,
working in reverse. There's to make them sicker, right?
right?
Because everyone's going to the bodega to get
All the
Takis and
right,
all that, and
right,
orange drink. It's not even juice, you know.
right,
And that's what they're supporting each other with.
right,
But if they were more focused on eating well and everyone supported each other, it would make a huge shift
right.
in just every aspect of your life. So again, you can use it towards the negative and the positive. There was a study done, I think, in the University of Southern California, where they studied the rate of violence after a major boxing match in the area. They
Wow.
found that crime all across the board went up 14% within a week, for a whole week after the boxing match. A week. And
So
so, conversely, when you do something like meditation, and there's been studies on this, when you do group meditation, it's called the Maharishi effect, right?
right,
When you do group meditation, crime goes down. And when they stopped doing the meditation, crime went back
what's
up.
up?
So here, these people who have the money, who have the power to do the programming and the television, they know this. That's why they keep on pumping fear.
They're using these very tactics that you're talking about, but they're using
Mhm.
it in a negative way.
Right.
Right. They're using
So,
it to support the system that they're creating. Let's put it like that.
mhm,
They have a system and they have things in place to benefit that system.
it's a parasitic system because all they're doing is siphoning off of our illness,
Right.
right? Our dis-ease, not disease necessarily, but our
Right.
dis-ease, right? We're not
Right.
in an easy state. So we as a community need to do the opposite. So this is the Maharishi effect. So people can look this up.
Mm-hmm.
Even Deepak Chopra talks about it, where he was more like, let me just continue with my medical practice because that's my bread and butter. And he went to a yogi and he was like, yes, I've been studying this and I've been studying it at a cellular level. And he's like, yeah, you have to understand that we're not matter like that. We're something that's well beyond that, and you need to study that. And
Mm.
he said, if you study that, I promise you, you're going to be more successful than with your practice. And that's exactly what happened, because he was affecting this collective consciousness with his books and with what he was teaching, because he was a very good PR person for
Mhm.
this yogi. So we can all have that effect,
Mm.
and it's going to amplify, right? It's going to amplify, it's going to continue growing, and it's happening. It is happening because I'm seeing people I would have never seen this before, or maybe it's because I'm noticing it more now because of the work that I've been doing and learning from you. I'm seeing people even on the subway with books on this stuff. I never saw that before.
Right. Your mind is in tune, your consciousness is in tune. So
Hmm.
you're gonna notice some things. You're gonna attract those people that is in that energy field.
Right. And they I'll stop and I'll ask them, like, when did you start reading these books? And they'll say, oh, like within the last few weeks, month.
Wow.
Right? So
Yeah.
we are having an impact. We
Right.
are having an impact. Others will call it the 100th monkey effect. That I'm not sure if you're familiar with that study, where
Mm.
they were monkeys on the beach and they kept on throwing down sweet potatoes,
Mm.
and the sweet potatoes had sand on it, so they didn't want to eat it. But then the researchers taught the two monkeys how to clean it off, and then those two monkeys taught other two monkeys and so monkeys, and it kept on going. And then every one of the monkeys on the island was doing it, and even neighboring islands, and
Wow.
they had no contact. So there's a shift in the collective consciousness.
Right. So they know that we are connected consciously.
Yes,
We are like
yes,
a network of
yes. Where
people.
it's a morphic resonance is what it's called, morphic
Right.
resonance.
Okay.
So that's, people need to remember that.
Right.
And they need to shield themselves from being bombarded with all this negativity. Remember, a I'm an important being in my community, and if
Mm.
I don't give into this, then my friend is not going to give into it, or my neighbor's not going to get into it, and then my next neighbor won't, and it's going to keep on growing.
Mm.
And
Right.
that's what we have to remember. I mean, community is
Is important.
powerful. And we have to remember, each of us has our gift to share. Each of us has our own ability to be a
Yeah.
hero.
My ability. I can talk, I can explain, I can teach. Where I fall short is like the background stuff. Like if I had somebody, okay, you just organize this, okay, and I could just run with it. That's and I've been doing this for 10 years, so it was time for me to have some true help. Like so,
Yes.
I thank you for taking on the assignment because it's good work but it's a lot of work because now you're dealing with people who really want to know, and then you're gonna run into the know-it-alls, and it's just one of those things. I don't know what my camera is um acting up, but I appreciate you coming on and taking it on. It's gonna be exciting. We have a lot of things to do, and it's up from here.
Yep.
Um, Before we shut it down and close it out, I want to give people a preview of my next week's show, Tuesday. So I'll share the video with you once we're done. Um, I created a TikTok video, and it's about the truth about birthright citizenship. Now, if anybody know the story of Pitchfork Ben Tillman and how he was the forefather of the 14th, 15th Amendment that disenfranchised what they labeled as African American people. Let me help y'all understand what the government think is an African American. Now, on applications, they have you check off, are you Hispanic and Latino, right? Y'all do understand that there is no designation for Dominican. There is no designation for Puerto Rican. There is no designation for Jamaican. There is no designation for Haitian. There is no what I'm saying, all of the Caribbean islands, all of those people, Puerto Rican all over, Colombian, Venezuelan, don't have designations. Guess what they default to? And I saw the behind the scenes document that they have in their database. They all fall under the African American / other title. I'm telling you this because it's very important to the 14th and 15th Amendment. So a lot of people are like, Trump is getting rid of the birthright citizenship. But remember, birthright citizenship was created under the 14th Amendment, and it was created to disenfranchise what they call now African American people. Now, think about that. So it's getting rid of birthright. And remember, the birthright citizen says being a citizen of the United States. We all understand what the United States is, where it is. And when we do the passport process, we're getting away from that. So this big uproar, he's this, he's doing that, is really not about Trump. But if the 14th Amendment, 14th and 15th Amendment was created to disenfranchise those particular people, then is birthright citizenship going away? Is it really a bad thing or not? To be continued. Tuesday, we'll talk about that. Because when you don't understand these documents and what they're saying, you'll get caught up and like, wait a minute, but you have to understand what's going on. I knew it for a long time. I just was sitting back and waiting for all the super gurus to have their say. Now it's time for me to have mine. I just wait. I just sit there, let everybody have their opinion. Because if I jump out there first, they'll take what I say and run with it and make it like they said it. But I'm letting them all say it. I'll talk to you guys on Tuesday. I'm sorry I didn't have a show yesterday. I was exhausted. I'm sorry. But we made up for it with our new host, Raquel, and the new show, Unbound Soul. That's the name of the show. That's the host number. It's not going to change. So record that. So late next week, no one chimed in this week. I didn't expect to because it's the first show. So hopefully next week we get more audience participation, and that should help. All right, and don't worry about the questions. I'm here to back you up. So, all right, Raquel, any last words?
Well, I think I'm gonna be closing every show with the famous words of Walter Mercado. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
No? Okay. Well, you grew up in New York. I'm sure you have some familiarity. He was it was at around 10:30 at night at the end of the news. He used to give the horoscope. He was from Puerto Rico.
Right.
And so he would say, I wish you all, all in Spanish though, I wish you all peace and much love.
Wow. Say it in Spanish.
Le deseo paz y mucho, mucho amor.
I might have heard that. That sounds vaguely familiar to me.
Oh, I'll send you a video. I'm sure you saw him at some point.
Sounds vaguely familiar to me. Yeah. You know what? I want to tell you, first show, you did a great job.
Thank you.
You did good. Yeah, I mean, natural. You're a natural. See? Just got to put you in front of the camera and the mic. Yeah. All right. And let you go.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
All right. Have a good night. Peace, prosperity, and extreme wealth to everyone. Good night.